My name is Macy James, and this is my campus dining carbon emissions final project presentation. This presentation is for my CIS 5860 class at Appalachian State University. So let's get started. So first, we're just going to go over some parts taken from our executive summary. So our project aims to raise awareness about food-related CO2 emissions, custom menu icons, to guide sustainable dining hall choices, and collaboration between the marketing department, nutrition, and campus dining. So a little bit of our project background. It was first initiated in August 2024, and then it was delayed by Hurricane Helene shortly after that in late September 2024, and it shortly got restarted back in November of 2024. The focus of the project itself is to assess CO2 levels in dining hall ingredients and as well the recipes that go with it. Some project objectives are to measure carbon emissions by ingredient recipe, introduce visual CO2 icons on the menus, encourage sustainable food choices, and to promote campus-wide sustainable food practices. So a few key constraints that we had going into this, time was definitely a big factor due to the semester schedule. There were some personal setbacks faced by team members, which was me. I faced a lot of issues that kind of set me back from getting some of the project done by a certain time. So yeah, that was definitely a constraint. Limited resources and external data dependencies. And then lastly, the complexity of the accurate CO2 data calculation. So some key risks here with this project was CO2 calculation accuracy, because if you didn't, calculate the CO2 right, it could mess with the nutritional values, or it could mess with the color icon that got placed on the menu. And the next risk was data integrity and input errors. So like I said, if we didn't have the right data or we input the wrong amount of CO2, it would just mess with a lot of factors that we had to go back in and fix. And lastly was the resistance to change from staff and students. So our students would have to get used to seeing the CO2 icons, and then our staff would have to adapt to these changes and ultimately redo the portion sizes for these food items with high CO2 emissions. Some key terminology here to remember is CO2 emissions. So this is a greenhouse gas that contributes to climate change. Yamex is our recipe and menu management software that we use campus-wide. My Emissions is a CO2 calculator tool, and the icon ratings, we use an A through F scale for CO2 levels. Some costs and benefits here. There were minimal costs. It was just mainly team time that we dedicated to the multiple weekly and monthly meetings, in both in person and on Zoom, data entry, research, and just stuff like that. Some of the benefits were environmental awareness, food transparency, and cost savings. It supports sustainable procurement and ethical food practices as well. So our methodology behind this, there were 5 steps. So step 1 was extracting ingredients from Yamex by dining station. So after we would get the ingredients from Yamex, we would put them into an Excel spreadsheet in order to do the next step here, which is to calculate CO2 values using My Emissions and store these values in Excel. The next step is to assign A through F ratings based on emission values. We got the A through F scale for My Emissions. It's originally A through E, but for the simplicity of it, we just used A, B, C, D, and F. So this was based on emission values, like I said, and then step 4 was to insert the icons into Yamex by product codes. And based on the level of CO2, your icon color was different. And each of these colors represented a different, like I said, level. And then lastly, step 5 was to display icons on digital and physical menu boards. Some The tools and infrastructure, like I said, Yamex was a core platform for ingredient and data storage. Excel was used for calculations and data management. My emissions was used for CO2 calculations and the rating scale. And then this secures access protocols applied to ensure data privacy, so only certain team members got full access to Yamex in order to keep the amount of people that could access and change the nutritional values and all the important stuff down. So when it comes to stakeholder involvement, we have quite a few. So campus dining staff, they implemented changes in the menu systems. Students and faculty, they were the end users that benefited from the transparency of the CO2 ratings. Nutritionists and dietitians, we had one that we worked very closely with, and she made sure the icons aligned with dietary planning. IT and analytics team was really more of an analytics team doing the research. It was me and one other person calculating the CO2 emissions. So we managed the data tools and dashboards. And lastly, we had weekly meetings that ensured collaboration and feedback. This is our project timeline. This was to scale. It kind of did change a little bit. So, setup, training, and data collection was on week 4. Weeks 5 through 8 was the analysis of the CO2 and menu icon design. Weeks 9 through 13 was data cleanup, testing, and updates. And then we have an ongoing timeline, which is menu integrations and weekly check-ins. So our current progress, we have completed CO2 assessments for 2 stations in one of our dining halls. They are Ignite harvest menus. The harvest menu is more of a natural menu, so it has more of the healthier options. The Ignite station is more like a grill area where they have like hot dogs, burgers, that type of stuff. These icons were deployed and we got some mixed feedback about it because some people don't really pay attention to it unless they have like food allergies, restrictions, stuff like that. And then lastly, observation sessions confirmed impact on these food choices. So simple sample ingredient ratings, since I can't use the actual data from the website itself. So for example, we have grilled chicken, which is at 3.5 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram. This would equal a C rating, which would be the yellow icon. So this would be our level 3. We have lentils, which is at 0.9 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram, which is an A rating. This would be the dark green icon, I believe. And like I said, it's the highest rating, so the healthiest that you can get. And then these icons help users make more eco-friendly food choices. So insights and early impact. So we had a high emission, we had very high emission ingredients. So beef was higher than plant-based options. Students were noticing and responding to these icons. Like I said, a lot of them that did notice it kind of stopped and really think about what they were putting into their bodies. And these dashboards are still under development for visual comparisons. So some future plans that we would like to have is to expand icon systems to all campus dining locations, host sustainability workshops and awareness events, further evaluate behavioral changes and food choices, and lastly, to explore adoption by off-campus vendors. And so in conclusion, we have a strong progress despite the obstacles from the semester. We received positive feedback from students and the stakeholders themselves. And lastly, the project serves as a model for sustainability on campus. And that is all. I really hope you enjoyed my presentation on my CO2 dining emissions, or my CO2 emissions for the dining hall. And I hope you learned a lot from this. Thanks for watching.